One of Harry Potter's strengths is its characters. Whether they be colorful and cheerful, villainous and dark, or some mixture, it's hard to forget them. Even the more grounded characters are memorable, and Draco Malfoy, with his bleach blonde hair and pale sneering face, is no exception. He's become the fandom's favorite bad boy. Malfoy began as a bully, but owing to some combination of well-written character development and unusual tastes in men from the fandom itself, Malfoy quickly became a favorite. Dozens of fanfictions, fan art, and so on attest to the character's popularity. But what of his origins? Before the Dramoni fix and the epic artwork, which would fill hundreds of Instagram and Tumblr pages, became the norm, who was Malfoy? Where did this swaggering bully come from? And where did he end up after Hogwarts? In this video, I aim to lay out his origins and his life beyond Hogwarts. Was he an arrogant bully, or a misunderstood teen with a secret heart of gold led astray by bigoted parents? Before we continue, I'm Riley and this is Otherworldly Fiction. On this channel, I discuss fantasy books, explore characters and lore, and share the occasional writing advice. If any of this sounds like your cup of butterbeer, hit that subscribe button. Posts are on Fridays. Malfoy's story began on the 5th of June, in the year 1980, with his birth. Born to Lucius and Narcissa Malfoy, he was a part of not one, but two great families, both of whom boasted of being members of the Sacred 28. The Malfoys were an old, wealthy, and powerful family, but Draco's mother, Narcissa, was formerly of the House of Black, yet another ancient and influential clan. The two families thought alike. Both were bigoted, favoring only pureblood wizards while betraying scorn for half-bloods, muggle-borns, half-breeds, and those they dubbed blood traitors. All members were expected to be sorted into Slytherin, and the Malfoys and Blacks belonged to the Sacred 28, a circle of pureblood wizarding families which had existed for several generations. In such a family, Malfoy had little chance of becoming anything but a bigot. Encouraged by his parents, he bought into their narrow-minded views. He was taught to regret Voldemort's defeat, and to resent those who were not of pureblood status. His beliefs became so extreme, he actually felt Hogwarts should disallow the attendance of students like Hermione because of their blood status. Of course, though he openly shared his extremist ideologies, even his parents cautioned him to keep certain opinions under wraps. He wasn't to tell the world he was pro-Voldemort, though he was honest enough with his friends. While his mother supported Voldemort's ideas, it was Lucius who was an actual Death Eater. Malfoy Manor was filled with dark artifacts, including heirlooms, which the family hid from outsiders. Among these relics was a Horcrux, entrusted to Lucius by Voldemort himself. Still, Lucius escaped arrest by making believe he'd been under the Imperius Curse, a common but effective lie told by several of the Death Eaters. Among the Death Eater families who escaped scrutiny were the Crabs and Goyles, whose children, Vincent and Gregory, would immediately fall into the roles of Draco's lackeys. Before even attending Hogwarts, Malfoy was given a tour of the castle and made to mix with other Slytherin children. Following this tour, Lucius attempted to enroll Draco in Durmstrang, mainly for its anti-Muggle and anti-Muggle-born beliefs. But Narcissa's affection and Draco's own interest in Hogwarts won out. Narcissa didn't want her son too far away, and as Draco had liked the school, Lucius relented and enrolled Draco at Hogwarts. It was during his first trip to Diagon Alley that Draco met Harry. In another scene left from the films, Malfoy encountered Harry in Madame Malkin's, where all students came to be fitted for their school robes. While there, Malfoy was rude towards the staff and opinionated. On encountering him, Harry was immediately reminded of Dudley. Though Malfoy attempted to suck up to Harry, on his father's suspicion that Harry would be a dark wizard, Harry was repulsed by Malfoy's manners. Harry continued to refuse Malfoy's interest on the train, outright refusing Draco's offer of friendship after Draco insulted Ron, Harry's newest friend, before Harry. Not one to be refused, Malfoy fell to hating Harry, and from there their bitter rivalry grew. Throughout his Hogwarts years, Malfoy made no end of trouble for Harry, though in the beginning he was more spiteful than dangerous. He tried to trick his enemies into detentions, first by inviting them to a duel in the trophy room before tipping off Filch that there would be students there, and then by ratting the gang out to McGonagall when they'd beat out of bed after hours. While his latter attempt was successful, his plan also backfired. He too was given detention, and, along with Harry, Hermione, and Neville, he was tasked with patrolling the Forbidden Forest with Hagrid. Though he tried to remain snide, referring to the chore as servant stuff, he was as nervous as the others. Concealing his own fears, he made a treat for himself out of tormenting Neville. Having terrified Neville too many times, resulting in false alarms, Draco was paired with Harry instead, though Harry wasn't one to be easily scared. As the second year progressed, Malfoy became more open in his views. He joked about the attacks, taunting the Muggleborns, and he used the derogatory term mudblood openly, prompting Ron to attempt a slug-vomiting curse on him. Believing Harry and Ron to be Crabbe and Goyle, Malfoy also expressed an interest in helping Slytherin's heir, revealing in the process that, despite his own views and lineage, he was not, as suspected, the heir himself. He earned himself a position on the Slytherin Quidditch team as the Seeker, though his actually working for the spot was called into question when Hermione suggested that his father had bribed the team into giving him a chance when Lucius provided each member of Slytherin team a Nimbus 2001. During the match, Malfoy's actual skill did seem questionable, as he overlooked the snitch when it was flying beside his ear. Too busy making fun of Harry, he missed it, allowing Harry to swoop past him and seize a victory for Gryffindor. Whatever his daddy did for them, Draco was chewed out by his team for his blunder. Though Malfoy's behavior continued to remain more annoying and obnoxious than anything, his antics endangered lives in his third year, namely that of the hippogriff Buckbeak. After stomping towards the animal during a lesson, despite being given instructions by Hagrid to be respectful and cautious, he was injured. Though his injuries were minor, he insisted they were worse. He made a point of wearing a cast, and of asking others to complete tasks for him. Ron became stuck chopping ingredients for Malfoy in potions class, and Malfoy hoped his ruse would result in Hagrid being fired. A move which would seem to permanently damage Hagrid's confidence in himself and his lessons. Though Hagrid wasn't fired, Lucius, who had undue influence in the Ministry, called for Buckbeak's execution. The date was set, but thanks to the efforts of Harry and Hermione, Buckbeak was rescued. Malfoy's gloating manner over the bird's planned death earned him a slap from Hermione. In his fourth year, Malfoy didn't improve. He continued to hurt Hagrid's self-esteem when he, together with Crabbe, Goyle, and Pansy Parkinson, spread lies that Hagrid was brutish and cruel in his classes. Knowing Rita Skeeter was an animagus, a beetle who could transform so as to eavesdrop on others without being heard, he'd whisper to her regularly. If attacking Hagrid wasn't enough, his lies also led to stories being printed about Harry and Hermione. The result of Malfoy's slander was that Hagrid became a recluse for a time, only regaining the confidence to teach when the Golden Trio and Dumbledore came to speak to him. As for Harry and Hermione, they contended with hate mail. Hermione was burnt by Tapas, sent to her in a vicious letter, and for the former, the groundwork was laid for him to be painted as crazy by the Ministry. In this way, Malfoy was partly to blame for the great hate Harry endured through his fifth year. Malfoy also showed an especial cruelty in his fourth year, laughing when Death Eaters, which included his father, tortured Muggles at the Quidditch World Cup. Knocked out, the Muggles, a family, were hung in the air and humiliated for the Death Eaters' enjoyment. Malfoy was also behind the Potter Stinks badges, which circulated when the school favored Cedric over Harry as Hogwarts champion. Like Ron and Hermione, Draco was selected as a prefect in his 5th year. Made a member of Umbridge's inquisitorial squad, he was also given the power to dock points at will. As such, he docked dozens of points from the Gryffindors, making a sport of it, and he earned 50 points for Slytherin when he aided in catching members of the DA, the group formed by Harry in rebellion against Umbridge. While Umbridge threatened to use the Cruciatus Curse on Harry, Malfoy stood happily by to watch. If this wasn't enough, Malfoy also taunted Harry. Furious, Harry pummeled Malfoy, and was aided in his attack by George. Using Harry's lapse to her advantage, Umbridge banned Harry and George from the Quidditch team. Fred, simply for being George's twin, was also banned for their actions. It didn't help that Ron, who remained on the team, was made the butt of a Slytherin joke, in which they sung a song, "Weasley is our king," to taunt him, praising Ron for letting the quaffle in and other such demeaning remarks. The lyrics, of course, were penned by Malfoy. It was in his 6th year that Draco's actions became truly dangerous, though this was also the first year he was to be pitied. Others noticed that Malfoy had lost interest in his usual pursuits. He stopped bullying others with his power as prefect, he left the Quidditch team, and even his snarky remarks were few and far between. This was because Voldemort had given Draco a task he was expected to fail. He had to kill Dumbledore, or risk Voldemort hurting his family. Malfoy no longer had the respect of the community, or the protection of his father, because Lucius, being caught at the Ministry during the Death Eater raid there, had been sentenced to Azkaban. Draco decided to use twin vanishing cabinets to smuggle Death Eaters into Hogwarts school. While it was a clever plan, there was a great chance of it falling through. When repairing the cabinets proved difficult, Malfoy began to panic. He scrambled for a plan B and a plan C, first attempting to kill Dumbledore with a cursed necklace, and then by poisoning a bottle of mead Slughorn had hoped to gift the headmaster. When these clumsy attempts failed, though not before they caused near-fatal harm to Katie Bell and Ron respectively, Draco's fear grew more pronounced. Seeking solace, he confided his concerns to none other than Moaning Myrtle, whom had been friendly towards Harry. The ghost, herself lonely and sad, empathized with Malfoy, and she offered what comfort she could. Even Harry noticed Malfoy's deterioration, as Malfoy grew thinner, paler, and developed circles beneath his eyes. Harry knew Malfoy was up to something, as he'd disappear, sometimes for hours at a time, from the Marauder's map. Harry even suspected Malfoy was a Death Eater, when he witnessed his visit to Borgin and Burke's and noted his threatening manner. Malfoy rolled back his sleeve, an action which terrified the shopkeeper, leading Harry to suspect he'd been given the dark mark. Ron and Hermione dismissed Harry's suspicions, only for Harry to be proven right. Malfoy had threatened to send Fenrir Greyback, a sadistic werewolf, after the shopkeeper if he didn't help Malfoy to repair the vanishing cabinet on his end. Eventually, Malfoy's plan succeeded. The Death Eaters stormed the school, but Malfoy couldn't bring himself to kill the headmaster. Dumbledore was weakened from drinking Voldemort's potion, and Draco disarmed him, but when it came time to deliver the killing blow, Malfoy lowered his wand. Despite bad-mouthing Dumbledore through his youth, he wasn't a killer at heart. Snape killed Dumbledore, and then escorted Malfoy from the premises. As a result of his role in letting the Death Eaters in, Malfoy was branded as a criminal. He wasn't able to return to Hogwarts, though Voldemort offered him some reward by freeing Lucius from Azkaban. Despite residing in Voldemort's protection, living at his manor, the year of Voldemort's reign wasn't a happy one for Malfoy. When made to torture others or carry out the work of a Death Eater, he grew uncomfortable. Seeing the reality of his previously narrow views, he was scared. When Harry was brought to Malfoy Manor to be identified, Malfoy performed his first noble act and pretended he couldn't tell, In reality, he knew it was Harry, but he decided to keep quiet. Draco only returned to Hogwarts to join the battle, where he confronted Harry in the Room of Requirement. In a last-ditch effort to save his family from Voldemort, Malfoy attacked Harry. However, Malfoy didn't want to kill Harry, unlike Crabbe, who was determined to finish Harry off. No longer able to control his friends, Malfoy was endangered when Crabbe cast the Fiend Fire spell. With the flames growing out of control, the three boys tried to clamber to safety. Though Malfoy tried to save them both, the fire claimed Crabbe's life. Harry and his friends rescued Malfoy and Goyle, and on reaching safety, the boys fled. However, Harry's intervention didn't end there. Cornered by a Death Eater, Draco fell to begging, telling the Death Eater he was on their side. For this, Malfoy earned a punch from Ron, after Harry had stunned the Death Eater. Along with the hit, Ron called Malfoy a two-faced bastard. Despite his poor actions, Draco inadvertently helped Harry. In disarming Dumbledore, he became the master of the Elder Wand. Then, on being disarmed by Harry during Harry's escape from Malfoy Manor, the allegiance of the wand went to Harry. Therefore, Voldemort couldn't gain full control of the wand, and it failed him when it was directed towards its true master. Following Voldemort's defeat, an awkward Malfoy family remained. While others gathered in the Great Hall to receive healing or be together, Draco, Narcissa, and Lucius sat off to one side. They no longer wanted to be Death Eaters, but were unsure of the reception they'd receive. With Voldemort's reign ended, Draco's family were pardoned, mainly because they defected from Voldemort's army in the end. Malfoy was allowed to remain free, though he was a changed person. Throughout his school years, Malfoy was undoubtedly a jerk. He was bigoted, cruel, rude, and ruthless, though he faced a great deal of pressure from his father to act and think a certain way, and his attitudes would change as he went into adulthood. Though he wasn't the misunderstood heartthrob fan fiction would make him out to be, as an adult he did confess to envying Harry, not for his prowess as a seeker or his fame, but for the deep friendships he had. Malfoy had Crabbe and Goyle, but even he knew these weren't true friendships. At least, they weren't friends like those Harry had. Nasty or not, even Draco could feel lonely. As a result of his family's fortunes, Malfoy wasn't required to work. However, he kept busy. He placed the family's artifacts in display cases, making a point of not using them, and he studied documents pertaining to alchemy. He also fell in love with Astoria Greengrass, a former Slytherin, who, like Malfoy, had gradually lost her former views. Astoria shared with Malfoy the curse which plagued her family. The Greengrass women were prone to suffering health problems, including death, if they gave birth. Draco was more than willing to end the Malfoy line to protect his wife, but Astoria insisted on them trying for a child. Together they had one son, Scorpius, who, like all Malfoys before him, was sorted into Slytherin. However, Scorpius was raised differently. Though Draco could be strict, he raised his son to be accepting of others and open-minded. Astoria encouraged Scorpius against bigotry, though this made it awkward when he had to visit his grandparents. Despite his scare, Lucius still clung to his outdated opinions. Malfoy and Harry didn't become friends, but they learned to be civil towards one another, and Malfoy managed a greeting towards Harry in the form of a nod. In fact, Harry even proved to be more prejudiced than Malfoy when it came to the matter of their sons becoming friends. Scorpius Malfoy and Albus Potter, outcasts in their shared house of Slytherin, became as close as only two outsiders could. Unfortunately, Harry remained mistrustful and tried to force Albus to give up seeing his only friend. Draco, however, felt differently. He actually liked Albus and was quick to disagree with Harry's choice. Draco wanted the boys to be friends and told Harry off for trying to separate them. Draco's family also had its share of tragedy, as Scorpius's birth did in fact impact his mother's health. Though Astoria had time to raise her son and develop a bond with him, she eventually passed away. grieving for his mother, Scorpius struggled to connect with others. In the arrival of Albus, Draco saw some hope for his son's improvement. Draco learned to respect Hermione as the Minister for Magic, following her directions without question, and he aided the Golden Trio when they needed to rescue their children from the Time Turner debacle in which Albus and Scorpius had become wrapped. In going over his history, Malfoy wasn't exactly a sympathetic anti-hero. However, he did have his moments of redemption, and he was able to improve as a person as he grew up. As a result of his change of heart, and perhaps because he was a little lonely in his youth, he quickly became a fan favorite. Draco continues to be shipped, featured in artwork, and made the hero of innumerable fanfictions. Cassandra Clare herself, now a celebrated young adult fantasy author, went so far as to dedicate a whole trilogy to Draco, popularizing his more romantic side in the fandom. Though Cassandra would come to blush over her work, her fanfiction series was popular, and it's funny to think that Malfoy would help to inspire the beloved Shadowhunter series. And looking at some of the Shadowhunter characters, which feature no shortage of blonde rich boys with magical abilities and witty tongues, it's hard to miss Malfoy's influence. Whatever your opinion of him, Malfoy has an interesting backstory, a strong personality, and a solid character arc. Whether you know him as the redeemed Death Eater, or the lost bad boy he's become in the fandom, his mark in the Harry Potter universe remains strong. What is your opinion of Malfoy's character? Have you ever read a Malfoy-inspired fanfiction? And if so, which would you recommend? Sound off in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and happy reading!